This commenter is asking about their service dog in training who was doing really well and then suddenly switched to where he is so overly aroused that settling stresses him out. And this comment was left on a video where we were talking about how for dysregulated dogs, whether the primary emotions that we're seeing are fear and anxiety or frustration, or if we're seeing a trauma response, regardless of sort of the underlying emotion driving the stress levels, we would still be focusing on reducing the stress levels versus focusing on operant conditioning and like teaching manners. And so in this sort of situation, what we would need to do is figure out the function of the behavior. We would need to figure out what's going on, what is stressing the dog out, and why are they stressed? How do they feel about that? The information here given in the comment says that settling stresses the dog out, and so one thing that can happen is we can certainly see that when dogs hit a certain point on the stress scale, they become adrenalized. In the orange zone is where we tend to see those external physiological stress responses where the dog is adrenalized, the body is tense. We might see panting from an elevated heart rate. We're going to see tension ridges, long lips, and so if the dog is adrenalized, it's very, very difficult to sit still. It takes a lot of resources and it involves asking the dog to do something that goes against everything that their body is telling them to do. And so asking an adrenalized dog to hold still can be incredibly aversive and very stressful. A dog who is more in the yellow zone, where they are on some of those lower levels of coming into a stressed place, may be experiencing positive emotions, may be experiencing negative emotions, but they are trying to cope with the stress in that yellow zone. Again, holding still may be against their need to cope. And so the dog may need to move their body, stretch, walk in a circle, have some sniffing around time. And so settling could be in direct opposition to what they need to do to calm down. Another thing that happens when we're asking our dogs to settle, which I'm going to assume means to lay down and be still, is that we remove the option for flight. So if my dog is trying to take distance or space from something that is stressing them out or overwhelming them, or that they need a break from, again, that settling behavior is sort of in direct opposition to what the dog really needs to feel better in their body. And so that's sort of a list of reasons why dogs may have a hard time holding still, or why being asked to hold still might cause additional stress. But we would still need to figure out why that stress response is happening in the first place, that is leading to performing a behavior that involves holding still that previously the dog was doing well with. What has changed? Since this is a service dog in training, it might be a fair assumption that this is a younger dog, although certainly not all service dogs in training are younger dogs. But adolescence is a really rough time. And so if you had a dog who was pre-adolescent in like their juvenile phase, or younger, and they were doing really well with following cues and public access work and that sort of thing, and then they hit adolescence, that would be a very normal time to see a big shift in behavior. In adolescence, the thinking brain physically shrinks temporarily. The amygdala, which is involved in a lot of emotions, particularly fear, we tend to think of with the amygdala, but the amygdala goes haywire. We see all sorts of shifts in adolescence behaviorally, more impulsive decision making. We see bigger stress responses faster. A lot of adolescence is managing the environment so that the dog can be successful while they get through this teenage phase, which it depends on the dog. There are a few different factors, but generally is from about 6 months of age to about 2 years old. It depends on the sex of the dog, if and when they were altered, and the size of the dog are three big factors that play into the length of adolescence. Another big suspect for me would be pain. Dogs who are painful may have a hard time being still, which is often the opposite of what we think of when we think of pain. But many dogs who are in pain actually become hyperactive. We might say, oh my gosh, I can't wear them out enough. And that is because pain is a good distraction, exercise is a good distraction from pain. It releases endorphins, so there may be some temporary pain relief, but it can also make things much harder because the dog is engaging in exercise and they are probably experiencing stress because they are in pain and they're not being very thoughtful or careful with their body, which can exacerbate things, particularly if you're looking at like a soft tissue injury or orthopedic issues. Sleep is often another big culprit. Through adolescence, dogs need about 18 to 20 hours of sleep. Adult dogs get about 12 to 14. And that can be tricky for a lot of dogs if they're not getting enough sleep. They can, similar to the pain response, potential pain response, they can seem hyperactive, toddler tired, and holding still can be very challenging. And so I'm definitely not able to craft an individualized behavior plan in the duration of a TikTok, but the trick would be to figure out why the dog is stressed. What underlying issue is going on? Is this developmentally appropriate? Is this pain? Is this a sleep issue? Has a new fear popped up? Did the dog make some sort of association and now they're fearful or anxious? Are they getting frustrated? What has shifted? What is going on with the dog? What are they experiencing that is causing performing a behavior that used to be easy for them to now be very challenging and stressful? And then I would go from there.